right, everyone, what's up? Welcome to the Partnership Mastermind podcast. Today's guest is someone who's been a great friend of mine for a long time, but I'm really excited to have him on here because he's one of those rare partnership leaders who's actually done the thing at every stage: 0 to 1, 1 to scale, global execution, revenue accountability, and fantastic people leadership. Billy McClennan is the new director of agency partnerships at Attentive, e-commerce giant. Before that, he was one of the earliest, actually the first partnership hire at Gorgias, hired by Phil Royu when the company was around $1 million ARR, and helped build what is now arguably known as one of the most successful e-commerce partner ecosystems in all of B2B SaaS. He later went on to build and scale a channel motion at Customer.io, and today he's back in e-commerce at Attentive leading agency partnerships. Last thing I'll say is this episode is not theory or hot takes for LinkedIn. It's how the work actually gets done by someone who's actually done it at the highest level. Billy, absolutely pumped to have you here.
I appreciate the intro, and I'm excited to be here. First time on a pod talking partnerships, at least. So yeah, excited to get into it.
Well, I mean, that's a huge disservice to the entire partnership ecosystem if no one's had you on, but we're honored to be the first. And one thing I respect about you a ton is that you're just no BS. It's all outcomes or bust. It's all metrics or bust. So I'm going to do my best to unpack the most successful things that you've been a part of so we can share that with our audience. You ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it.
Sweet. Well, we always start every episode off with what we call the Fast Five. So 5 quick hitting questions to get you warmed up and give the audience an opportunity to get to know you a bit better. So for this one, don't overthink it. Just the first thing that comes to your head. Mix of lighthearted questions with some tactical ones. All good?
Let's do it. I'll try my best.
All right, cool. First things first, what's one partnership belief you had earlier in your career that you now think is just dead wrong?
Yeah, this is going to sound odd for me because I'd say I'm very sales focused, but I'd say that I used to think partnerships was only about closed won revenue, and I'm still measured on that. I still do believe that, but yeah, partnerships has a massive impact across the entire business, right? Like it's not just source revenue. There's a lot of things that you can't track, right? There's we're talking Gorgias. You integrate with Shopify. Huge TAM to go after. The whole company's focusing on Shopify, right? You get featured on a webinar with OpenAI now. Huge audience for your company. So there's so many things that partnerships can contribute to the business. I think unfortunately it's just hard to track the upside of those things. So I'm very sales and revenue focused, but yeah, huge impact across the entire business.
No, I think that's a great one. I think it's satisfying for other folks to hear. And we'll get into it a little bit later when we talk about Gorgias, because we both grew up with our first partnerships boss was like revenue, which I think has a lot of benefits. And we'll talk a lot about that later, but it also can put blinders on you that doesn't allow you to have that holistic understanding of like the true impact that partnerships can bring. But we'll talk about that in a little bit later. Speaking of which, second question for you, Billy, is what's the most overrated KPI that partnership professionals might use today that just gives you the cringe?
I don't know if this is a hot take, but for me, it's influence revenue.
Yep.
I know, and not because I don't think it's valuable. I do think the
just
impact that partners have on influence. It's just, I think the way it's being used now is it's being used to try to justify the success of a partner program most of the time where you can't figure out how to get direct revenue. And because of that, there's a lot of subjectivity, a lot of fluffiness. And I think it's just used the wrong way. It is valuable, but so I think it's just, it's a hard metric to double down on.
Yeah, no, I think that definitely classifies as like spicy take. I think it's such a polarizing topic. I've talked about it at length on our episodes. I think that I agree with you totally. I think in a vacuum, when executed correctly and measured correctly and attributed correctly, it's a really successful motion. In fact, influence was the first partnership motion that predated sourced, for those who are like students of the game. But too many people try to use it as this like fluffy way to measure it and justify their impact. And if it's your only quota element, your job security is toast. And the last thing I'll say, I'll see if you agree with this, Billy. If your AEs aren't the ones going into Slack saying, oh, thanks so much to the partnerships team, shout out to Billy, save my deal. If like that type of chatter isn't happening, you're not really influencing deals, because AEs will be the first to like scream it from the mountaintops because they know better than anyone else if you really influence the deal. Does that resonate?
Yeah, 100%. And then just to add on top of that is if and I've seen this at companies I've worked for too. Like if the partnership team is saying how amazing they are, they've influenced, $20 million and $50 million in pipeline generated and all that stuff, and the sales team doesn't see that number, you're going to lose credibility with the sales team, and they're not going to respect the partnership that you need to have with sales. And honestly, if you want a good partner program, you need sales dialed in. So
100%.
Yeah, I like influence revenue, but it's not, I think it's It's gone a little too far.
Make
these
sure your
days.
source revenue driver is like rock solid and everybody knows it's undisputed, and then go figure out influence, but not the other way around. I totally agree.
100%.
Cool. All right. The next one for you, a bit of a fun one. You've published papers, scientific papers in the top academic journals, right? As a lead author, in fact, just to give you a little bit of a tire pump. And you also generated millions and millions in partner source revenue, 8 figures, in fact. Which was more intense and challenging to do?
It's a good question. You know, I haven't thought about research in academia in a long time now, but I would say intellectually research was harder, right? There's a lot of logic, a lot of science, a lot of math. But honestly, like partnerships and sales is a lot more mentally challenging. There's a lot more art to it. We're science people, so I think science can be easier in some cases, but there's a lot of art that goes into GTM and partnership. So mentally, I think it can be more exhausting. You need the IQ, but you need the EQ, and you know, I think that's something that I'm trying to work on all the time.
That's a great bar. I love that line. And as a former academic myself, I would agree totally. I think I like purely intellectually, I think nothing compared to like my time in academia. Like literally, like you don't get to publish a paper unless you've advanced the entire state of the art, right? Like good was not good enough. You either like discovered something that never existed before or you don't publish a paper. So like the intensity was so high, but I agree. There was more predictability. Like once you figured out conditions and experimental procedures, like you could get the same result over and over again. Where in the business world, everything is like poorly defined. Like humans are random. There's so much randomness to it. And there's real human emotions involved, which are molecules didn't give us those same type of fits.
No,
if that makes sense.
You didn't have to deal with many humans in the lab, maybe 2 or 3 on a daily basis. But
and they didn't like to talk too much.
No, most of them.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right, second last one, and we'll get into the fun stuff. Well, look, you just, it's January 2026. You just joined Attentive, which was a huge splash in the ecosystem. You're welcome back to ecom. Question is you could have chosen basically any company or any ecosystem given your pedigree. So I'm curious, why Attentive, why now, and why should agencies lean into Attentive amongst a credit group this year?
Yeah, it's a great question. You get to quiz me on this 3 weeks into the role, but I think throughout my conversations, and now it's been validated since I've been here for a few weeks, is I would say Attentive. The main reason was the level of resources that they provide in the partner program. So I'll give you examples, right? Like we have partner managers, we have agency success managers that help partners with managed account. We have dedicated partner enablement. We have a partner engineer that joins lunch and learns to do demo platforms. Of course, we have partner marketing and events. And to be honest, like 80% of partner programs don't have that level of like full-time. It's a lot of borrowed resource. 80% of partner programs don't have full-time resources like that. And so I just think, I've been amazed. It's like, there's so much opportunity, so many things we can do better with our partners because we have so much resource. That's definitely a reason to double down. And then I'd say just from an ecosystem perspective, half of Attentive's revenue is on Shopify. If you're in retail and e-com, half is not. So you're not pigeonholed to one ecosystem. And then, Attentive is, I would say, more mid-market and enterprise focused, so that there's just a really nice customer base. If you're looking to, there's a really nice customer base if you're looking to kind of tap into some great logos. And they've added a lot of new product functionality. The AI suite's really cool. So I think there's just a lot of services that agency partners can build off of with partnering with Attentive.
Love that. Well, congrats again. We're huge fans of Attentive at Partnership Mastermind. So excited to see what you do in year 1. Last question, and we'll get into the good stuff, is we ask this to all the guests. If you weren't in tech or biz dev and money wasn't the concern, right, which I know will be hard for you to detach from, what would Billy McClennan be doing with his time?
I already know the answer to this. We talk about this all the time. If I could just do anything right now, I'd probably open up my own coffee shop. I'm a pretty big coffee snob, self-made barista, let's say, and be coffee in the morning and some nice toast, homemade bread. And then that same oven would be used for pizza in the evening. So it'd be like a coffee shop in the morning and a pizza shop at night. That's what I'd be doing.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear. I did know that. I didn't know if it was still true, but I'm glad to hear it. And as a fun fact, Billy and I are really close friends. So for like the last couple of years, he'll Snapchat me a picture of a cortado he's made with a little heart shape and the foam, and he asked me to rate it. To be honest, I was giving a lot of 4s and 5s for a while, but Billy's now pretty dialed in on his coffee shape. So I think
myself like a a 7 consistently now, and the odd time I'll get up to like an 8.5. Hopefully 10 soon.
Love it. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for that, Billy. I think that gave the audience a really good glimpse into who you are. So now let's get into the fun stuff. We always start with the origin story, really just how do you even get into partnerships, because we all have very random backgrounds. So for you, you didn't wake up one day and say, yep, I want to be in partnerships. You were actually working for an e-commerce merchant, launching a muscle auction center, very non-SaaS. And then you make the jump to Gorgias when it's under 20 people. So let's just start there. Take us back to that moment. How did you first end up in partnerships, and what made you say yes to joining Gorgias when the company was still so early? And that was a pretty big bet.
Yeah, I mean, similar to you, I didn't go as far as you, but I was in research, and then I had a pretty entry level sales job selling lab equipment to universities and hospitals and pharma. And I got introduced into startup through a mentor or family member at that, and they introduced me to these two guys at MIT, and they were building a muscle auction sensor, and I was like, oh, I can use my chemistry experience to help with that. And so I relocated to the States with them, and essentially we launched it. So it was there when it was just 3 of us. We launched it pre-revenue, and it was a direct-to-consumer business. We wanted to sell to consumers, so we launched on Shopify, and so I did the Shopify motion on the brand side for 2 years. And honestly, like Gorgias it was a bit lucky. That company did well for a year. It's hard to raise in the wearable space at the time. And so they found an exit. And so I was kind of like, well, what do I want to do? And I had been connected with the founder of Gorgias. He was trying to sell me on Gorgias as a help desk at the time. We were on Zendesk. And so we were chatting and got connected to Philippe, who obviously is a good friend of ours and we worked for a long time. And they needed a partnership motion. I guess I had the e-com experience, not necessarily partnerships, but I knew merchants. And so, yeah, they brought me over to do partnerships.
Amazing. I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, Leaky, current CEO of Gorgias, Romain Lapierre, hitting you up and you're having these conversations like true scrappy startup. Okay, that's great. So that's how you got in. So now take us back to look, so many people, especially in the e-com space, have deep respect for Gorgias to this day in the partner program. And you were arguably one of the most influential people in getting it to where it is today. So we're big on giving people a glimpse into what it was actually like at the boots on the ground. We had Rich Gardner from Klaviyo. He took me all the way back 6 years past when he started. What did Klaviyo's partner program really look like? It was shocking how ill-defined it was. So literally speaking, what did Gorgias's partnership program look like, if there even was something, when you joined Phil?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there was something. I mean, Phil's probably the best CRO personality you could get. He knows how to sell anything to anyone, even if it doesn't make sense for them. So I guess when I joined, it's true. I don't know if that's a shout out for Phil or not, but yeah, he's a great salesperson. And it's just a great entrepreneur. But when I joined, it was not really a partnership motion. It was an events motion. It was
right.
Philippe was going all over the world to these events, carrying a TV, a small TV, cheap booth, and he was booking meetings and booking demos and getting revenue. But then that's how the partners were met. So he met all the tech partners, all the agencies. And so there was maybe 10 or 20 of those original Shopify partners. Phil had some good relationships. I joined, and he asked me to do the same thing. Go to every single event that you can think of, meet the partners, ask them for referrals, and pay them a 20% rev share. That was partnerships. It was get a referral and give them a 20% rev share. There was no kind of structured program or what's in it for the partner or anything like that. That's kind of how it started. Wow. And I don't know how much detail you want me to give here.
Yeah.
That's how it started. That's how I got into it. It was a 20% rev share for a referral.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty fascinating. For such a successful partner program like Gorgias, it didn't start with we're very intentional. Partnerships is this big bet. We're going to start to scale this thing. I think it's a good lesson for a lot of scrappy early stage companies, seed, series A, even series B. If you don't have this pop in partnership program, events is it's just this panacea. It's this place where you can meet so many people, see what's going on in the industry, get a pulse on the ground. And a lot of partnership motions can kind of get started there. So I think Gorgias's origin story is a good validation of that. The follow-up for you then, Billy, is, okay, you're starting to meet these agencies, you're starting to get them all fired up. Let's talk about really scaling things now, right? When you're starting to really build a traction, you're now in people management, you've got some partner managers coming in. So help us understand what were the first few really successful bets that you made in building out the agency partner program that genuinely changed the trajectory of the Gorgias partner program as a whole? Just like if you close your eyes, you think of the most successful individual plays or playbooks or motions that really paid off. What were those? What do those look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think Gorgias was unique, and I want to caveat too here. Like Gorgias was and still is maybe a bit more upmarket, but an SMB product. It was a $3,000 to $4,000 ACV product, and when you think about the deal sizes, it's like there's not a lot on surface level. There's not a lot of value that you can give to an agency. The rev share is insignificant. The services aren't going to be there because the customers don't have budget. If they're paying $300 a month for a SaaS tool, so. I guess take a step back. When I was when I started at that motion, I was asking for referrals. I was saying Gorgias was awesome, help desk for Shopify. But I started getting the typical questions around, well, can you send me leads? Yeah, what about us? How can I get it's always like, how can I get leads? But how can I get leads? And all of those kind of questions are, hey, the rev share is insignificant. I don't care about it. And we didn't have a partner program, so that was tough for me at first. So I think early on I had that mindset of, what can we do for partners? And so to answer your question specifically, what were the few big bets? And we might talk about this later, but you got to be honest with yourself. Like, what can you give partners? And like I said, at Gorgias, they weren't going to implement Gorgias. It was a $4,000 deal size. They built Shopify websites. So they weren't going to make money off of that. The rev share was insignificant, but what we did really well, was I'll say partner marketing, but the events motion. So Gorgias spent a lot of money on events, even when they were a 30-person company. And so the first thing I did was say, okay, 100% of events are going to be with partners. And so I thought of partner marketing as a benefit for partners. And I said, hey, we're not going to charge partners to go to a dinner, but we're going to let you sponsor. We're going to put your logo on it. You're going to promote. That's your sponsorship. Promote it. We're going to bring you to the event and we're going to have a dinner with 30 great brands, or we're going to have a happy hour with a couple hundred people, and we're going to generate lists for you. And like, these are lead lists for you, and you're going to be a sponsor. And a lot of these agencies didn't have budgets to sponsor anyways, where tech companies do. And so I just doubled down on the agency, on the partner marketing motion, and said, hey, you're going to get free sponsorships. You're going to get lead lists. We started doing in-person, our own meetups, and every single speaker was a partner, and you're going to be able to speak to these brands. You're going to be able to promote your brand, and get lead lists. Virtual as well. Obviously, during COVID, we did a lot of virtual stuff, and we were generating, I'll call them not hot leads, but thousands and thousands of leads, and hundreds of thousands of impressions. And so that was really the biggest value add that I could give partners early on. The second piece to just add, and then I'll kind of transition to you, was, Gorgias didn't have a lot of competition as a help desk in Shopify, like Zendesk, Gladly, before RichPanel. There was no help desks that were trying to partner with these agencies. And so it was essentially just, we are the help desk for Shopify. It was and is a phenomenal product. And you're building a website. If they're on Shopify, they have to use us. So that was the second piece, was a lot of enablement, just saying, hey, we're the best. It's not complicated, but we're a checkbox in your migration. And so I'll give you two things. The enablement piece, hey, we're a great product for your customer, and like, we're going to prop you up because we have thousands of customers and big marketing budgets, and we'll invest in you there. And so I'd say those were the two things that we could add early days. And we scaled the team out globally like that. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I love that. I think people might be surprised listening, but they should be taking note of like how much like partner marketing and really events is like steeped. And like, look, Ilya's team, I know firsthand, was like built what became like an 8-figure sourced revenue channel, right? Like over years. So like, this is the real deal. But I think they might be surprised at how events focused it is. But to Billy's point, sometimes you need to do that. It's phenomenal for building these relationships up and building these champions. But if you have a lower ACV and therefore rev share is not as enticing, and therefore your customers simply don't have as much to like spin up a services program where you can really like launch that, this is really the only other play that Billy and his team could have made. And what I can also say firsthand is it requires a very specific persona from a partner manager perspective that can even pull this off, right? Like someone who might be like overly strategic and wants to sit at their desk all the time. Like those people don't work out in these type of roles. So Billy, this is a final question. I'll flip gears, is like, quickly tell us, like, based on the playbook that you just described, that obviously was wildly successful, like how did that like force you to think very carefully about who you could hire, right? Like thinking with the best people that you've hired. And obviously we've both made some whiffs before where it's like just wasn't the right strategic fit. So like help us understand the hiring persona, given the playbook that you're running, which was unique versus more strategic at your desk type partner manager roles.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to caveat here because it's not like, hey, you can like events is how you spin up a proper
No, of
partner
course,
motion.
of
People are
course.
probably, but what I want to say here is this is gonna depend, and we might talk with this on your ICP, your product, like a bunch of different things. Like at Customer IO, very different. Like we had that motion, but very different, which maybe we'll get into if we have time. And at Attentive, that's a big part of it, but there's a lot more you can do. So it really depends. And we'll talk about this, but you got to be honest with yourself about what you can add. But you get back to hiring personas. Yeah, I mean, first of all, partnerships is very relational, anyways. So I learned early on you need a really outroverted person. And in the case of Gorgias, almost an outroverted relationship person did better than a really smart product or technical person. And if you look at Gorgias, they have an amazing partnership team still, but everybody on the team is very, very outroverted. And some of the best partner managers there that I worked with and other companies are just very outroverted. So yeah, I mean, it depends on your motion, but if you think that you can hire a partner manager who has really strong channel sales or reseller experience into, let's call it like a high volume partnership motion, like they're probably not going to enjoy it and it's probably not going to be a good fit. So yeah, you do got to think about what kind of partner program you're running and
I think that's
how that person fits in.
I think that's great. It's a good call for anyone listening who is hiring or will be hiring of like, look, you need to avoid the mistake of, okay, you hired people before in a different company, in a different context that were successful. And you just think you're going to apply those same traits as you go look for the next type of people at your next company. It's like, no. Like the program could be totally different. In Billy's situation, you need people with stamina, right? Like people who can manage a crazy book of business where it's like whack-a-mole, like you're getting not maybe a ton of leads from a few partners, but like just, a lot of leads gross, but from like a lot of different partners, a ton of events, right? So like, you need to work backwards from the program you're building. So I think that's a key takeaway. Now let's flip it, Billy. And just to wrap up your time at Gorgias, what's one key mistake perhaps that you're willing to share in a moment of vulnerability that, obviously didn't break the program or like wasn't overly critical, but it was like, you know what, like if I could go back in time and like reverse that one, could have saved me a lot of headache and we probably could have put a bit more points on the board. Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I'd say, and I don't even want to call this a mistake. Maybe it was too early in Gorgias's kind of life cycle and where the partner, not where the partner program was, where the product was, honestly. But we got to a point where, we were trying to continue. We were growing 100% year over year. The partner revenue for a while, you were a part of that too. We got to a point where obviously that was slowing down and everything was like, how can we get incremental gains? Can we grow, well, we were getting incremental. We were growing, maybe 5 or 10%. And it's like, how can we get back to 30, 40%? And so we tried to basically say, hey, we're going to build a services motion at Gorgias. So partners are going to implement Gorgias and offer services. And it wasn't a mistake, but it was a ton of effort. We hired dedicated enablement resources to build up that practice. And the reality was, and this is going back to being honest with what you can offer your partners, was these type of partners didn't want to offer a customer support offering. The Gorgias product and a lot of Shopify products were plug and play. There wasn't that much services to be had anyways. And so, there was high level interest, but it just was not something that the partners that we worked with were willing to invest in. And it ended up just being a lot of time and effort on that. And, Gorgias just didn't have the right product at the time. I think they're probably in a better place now with their AI agent. And, it's a bit more complex these days, but at the time, yeah, it's just, probably wasn't worth kind of getting into that and going deep there.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, thanks for sharing that, Billy. And I think it's another key takeaway, similar to the last one on the hiring side, is like, look, like Billy's been saying, like, you have to be honest with yourself. And like, just because you maybe stood up a successful services program at another company doesn't mean the same thing is going to work. And I candidly, like in my first head of partnerships role, I made that same mistake. I made all these crazy assumptions that the same playbooks I had run, say at Gorgias, were going to apply the same. And like so many things were different variables wise. And I got my butt whooped, right? So I think that's a key takeaway for any leader level person here responsible for building a program on the early days is like, look, it's good to have playbooks in your back pocket that have worked before, but you need to just assume all the variables will be different, right? Otherwise you avoid making some really costly assumptions. Okay, cool. Now we're going to transition into the next segment. And this one is one that in our prep for this call, I took away as being a particularly passionate topic for you. And we're calling this one like go deep with few is lazy. And so there's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in partnerships, which is go deep with a few. And you've been pretty clear and vocal that most of the time that advice is lazy. So my question for you, Billy, is why do you think go deep with few became the default answer when partner programs underperform?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm decently passionate about this too. So a lot of times on social or even out of social, you hear partnership leaders or individuals say, I need to stop, I have 50 partners, but I just need to go deep with few and focus on my top 5 partners. And again, depending on your product and your segment and your situation, I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's usually just a cop out. And I think it's a lazy answer. It's basically what I see is, hey, I have all these partners. They're not generating revenue. I'm not hitting my quota because they're not yielding. So I'm going to blame them and say, I'm just going to go with the top 5. So that's why that frustrates me because most of the time it's a lazy answer, and the team, the partner program, the individual, whoever it is not taking accountability and asking themselves, why aren't these partners generating revenue for me? So yeah, I that bothers me most of the time.
Yeah, I can tell. I love it. We love to press on the show, so I'll follow up. So then tell us, Billy, how should things like deal size, ICP, partner economics actually dictate whether depth or breadth is the right play?
Yeah. That's the right question that you need to be asking. And I'll just start with this. Like, there's lots of really successful partner programs that have multiple thousands, 5,000, 10,000 partners. HubSpot, thousands of partners. Klaviyo, 10,000 partners. Salesforce, thousands of partners. Shopify, $10 billion business with 4,000 or 5,000 agency partners. So you can have a ton of partners in your partner program. But to answer your question, like, I'll go back to Gorgias and then I'll kind of contrast with something else. But if you're Gorgias with a $4,000 average deal size, and most of your agencies that support your customers work with, 5 million to 15 million GMV brands, you don't have the luxury of having 20 partners. Like, you need 100 plus deals a month. So, and there's not a single Shopify partner, I'll say that right now, that is going to give one tech vendor, that level of volume. So you need to play the volume game. If you are truly enterprise and let's say greater than 100,000 deal size, ideally more, and your product is very complex, you don't have a professional services team, there's a lot of implementation lift, and then you can maybe go fewer partners. And again, to do that though, these partners need to be able to generate 6, ideally 7 in true enterprise 8-figure service practices to go go with few, right? If you want to go with the GSIs or the large SIs, you want a Merkle or a Publicis or a Deloitte or an Accenture, like, you need a product like GCP or AWS or ServiceNow or Salesforce. Like, you're not, if you think that you're going to get the few partners at the average startup with a 10 or 30 or 40K product, like, that's just, you're going to set yourself up for failure. So the answer is it depends on your situation. Can you go deeper with few, or do you need to play the volume game?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. And it might be intuitive for some, but like, not enough people actually clearly like follow that advice. And I think they do default to like, go deeper, go deeper, go deeper. I've had bosses, CEOs pressing me so hard to do the same thing you're describing. It's like, look, like, I can show you all the math. I can show you how big these client lists are and the average deal size we can expect. Like, we need more volume. But the follow-up question I want to ask you here, Billy, is I think it's more intuitive to think about how to go deep with fewer larger partners. So like, let's park that one on the side, but let's focus on what you have like a specialty with, which is like high volume, right? Let's talk about the operational complexities of that, right? So let's just say you're a program lead or a team lead or a head of agency partnerships, and you do have hundreds, if not thousands of partners, smaller, but highly transactional. Like, you can take this any direction you like, but like, talk to us about like the most important operational components to have right from the early foundational stages, so this thing scales. And again, you can take this in any direction you want, like from like minimizing lift for like applying, getting a partner, like discovery call book, getting them into onboarding. Like, you mastered that, like having all the right data. But like, if you're going to have a high value program, okay, but like, tell us, like, what are the most important operational components that must be in place, or you will have an insane leaky bucket?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. There's twofolds. There's like, how do you build a partner program that provides value to 1,000 partners? Like, I would ask yourself that. And then how do you manage it internally? On the first point that I made, if you're one of these people watching, you have 1,000 partners in your program, you can say go deep with few, in the sense that you're going to have 20 partners that generate a lot of your revenue, and you are going to spend 80% of your dollar and human resource on those partners. That's not wrong. But, if you have 1,000 partners, you probably are providing a decent amount of value to the other, 900 partners that you can't spend a ton of resource on. So I'll start with the external piece. Like, you need to think about what value can I give partners at scale? Again, it's nuanced, but hopefully your product, if your product feeds a massive gap in what their customers can do, and you can educate them on that, they're going to use your product even if you can't give them a lot of resources. You don't always have that, but that's like one thing right there. If you do have larger deal sizes, maybe rev share can get interesting. Or if you have lower deal sizes but you have small partners, maybe a few $1,000s a year is enticing to those smaller partners, and they'll leverage that. And then things like webinars, newsletters, town halls, like just ways to keep them engaged. So like, you need a program that can support that volume of partners. Now, operationally, you need a really good CRM/PRM, or ideally them integrated together. But you need the ability to say, to pull a report and say, hey, here's 1,000 partners in my program. 30% of them are actively generating business. The other 70% are dormant. This you need to be able to up tier and down tier in real time. So like, hey, it's the start of a new year. These 50 are going down tier. These 20 are going up. Like, and ideally you can automate a lot of that. So a good operations, like a good partner ops person is good. And then commissions is a pain for even low volume partner programs. It's a pain. But if you have a lot of partners and you need to pay out small amounts to a high volume of partners, you need to have that as automated as possible. Those are some of the things that come to mind that you need to operationally be able to look at 1,000 partners at scale.
Those are great. I love that you took it externally. Like, hey, like you need to like read the room. Like, what is like the demographic of those, say, 1,000 partners, and then how can you have like different value buckets to support kind of each of them? That's important. And then on the back end operational side, to be honest, we could have a whole other hour-long episode on just the operational side, because there's so many more things I'd love to unpack with you. Like you built such a strong funnel, like partner acquisition, like getting demos booked or discovery calls booked. Okay, then the discovery calls done. Are they qualified or not? If qualified, then enroll into partner onboarding. Like condense that as fast as possible, and you like measure that cycle over cycle. Okay, great. First time, time to first lead, time to first close one, retention rate. So like, again, that's something you specialize in. Hopefully we can find additional time for that. But we're going to get into the next segment, which is around executive support, calling this the silent multiplier killer. And you and I have both worked at several different B2B SaaS companies. We've had some great leaders. Candidly, we've been around some leadership that's not as strong. And so what I want to talk about now is, and we're not going to name names by any means, but just how important that executive layer is in having them truly understand partnerships, and what are the costs when they don't. So the first question for you, Billy, is, and again, I think this is such an important conversation, sorry to give you context, because I constantly talk to partner leaders like yourself who are just like, I'm like, what's the hardest part of your job? And they're like, oh, it's easy. Like, my company doesn't believe in partnerships. And I'm like, but are you having an impact? And, as much as I can tell, they're still like, look, the numbers are real. Like, we're really crushing. But they have a really bad boss who could be a VP of partnerships, could be a revenue-oriented person. So this is a real problem, like people just not getting the trust and respect they need. So the first question for you on this one, Billy, is like, what are the earliest warning signs that maybe a partner leader is being set up to fail, even if the strategy itself is sound?
That's definitely a loaded question. Say that again so I can think.
Yeah, of course. So basically it's like, hey, look, say you know someone and they just get this first like head of partnerships job or senior director or VP of partnerships job. Right? Like, what are some early warning signs that they might have that might indicate that they're being set up to fail with respect to like, they're just the right support, the right belief, the right buy-in, the right resources are perhaps not in place as much as they thought in an interview cycle?
Yeah. I mean, I think the easiest one to me, and you'll get comfortable with this when you start interviewing at other companies for people out there that maybe have gotten promoted into the head of the partnership job, but like, you should be asking what kind of resources you're going to have allocated to you when you join as a head of partnerships. Like if you're joining as the first head of partnerships role, or there's like a couple people and you get there and they're basically like, you're not going to have headcount, or you don't have partner ops, or like, we're not willing to invest in certain resources that you need a PRM, right? Like if they're not giving you any resources, then that's probably going to be a pretty tall tall task to start. So I would say
Yeah.
those are a couple of things that I'd be looking at is resources. That's the number one thing. And I ask that when I'm talking to companies, like, what
100%.
resources do you have? What resources am I going to get? And that'll give you an idea if they actually believe in partnerships.
Yeah. What percentage of the revenue target you're going to hang in my head? Are we going to be able to commit back to budget? Like, these are all the tough questions. And like, candidly, we're all humans. It's easy to like not ask some of these tough questions in interviews when you're so excited about the job, because you almost like don't want to like hear anything negative.
Yeah.
Right? You just want to like, usually I want this job. But it's like, you need to ask the toughest of questions, because you don't want to like, taking a job is one of the most biggest commitments you could ever make. So you don't want to make the wrong mistake. So then the next question for you, Billy, is like, help us understand just how costly it is. And we've both been in situations before. And again, we're not going to name names, but like, help us understand like how costly can it be when there's like big changes in leadership, or you join a company and poor leadership's in place above you, whether it's VP partnerships or, C-suite. Like, how costly can it be? How disruptive can it be for an otherwise productive partner program when these changes happen? Like, what can actually happen, as much as you're willing to share?
Yeah, it's good. And I've been through this like multiple companies, so it's fine to talk about. And I've actually gotten more comfortable dealing with these things. But outside of partnerships, every company has phases of change. You get from C to Series A or Series B, different people come in, that the early people aren't the right fit. And it's the same with partnerships to an extent. Like, you might be a part of that. Oh, you were great for this role at this time, but now we think we want to bring in a different person for this role at this stage. And those things can always be disruptive. I'd say how detrimental or how impactful. I think it depends how robust the program you have is. If you have a really strong program that you built and there's a leadership change at the top, like, it's probably going to work itself out, unless this person is like, I have a completely different strategy and I'm going to go for a 360, which I haven't seen that big of a shift when someone new comes in. Like, it's hard to rock the boat that much. But it can have an impact. And I think it's tough to adapt to that depending on the situation that you're in. But it can definitely have a big impact.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. The reason I wanted to ask that is like, look, some people maybe haven't been through that yet. And maybe you're interviewing right now, or maybe things are changing in your company. Like, you obviously need to qualify for your job, but your company also needs to qualify for you. And that's why it's like so important to be a high performer. Not to say something obvious, but like, the more you can like create your own leverage, be a good human being, and be a high performer, then you do have the luxury of qualifying your company and be like, you know what? This company was great for me for the past couple of years, but things have totally changed. This maybe isn't the right fit for me. So that's why I asked that question, for people to start to have
the other piece.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, no. The other piece for that is just, and it's tough. Like, you got to work what's in your control, and the reality is some of those decisions aren't in your control. And if a change is made, and you're still enjoying things, and you're growing, and that the program's growing, then I think you continue with that. But if the change is made and you don't think it's in the right direction, whether you're right or wrong, like, what can you control, right? Like, you can look elsewhere and look for your next role. So I think you just have to focus on what you can control. Like, you can't control everything, but Chris is absolutely right. If you're a high performer and you're valuable to the company, like, you probably have a little bit more influence when those changes happen, and you try your best to be a part of those changes so that you can have your impact and feedback on that. Yeah,
that's good advice. And I like just focusing on where you can control. I think the bigger the company you work at, like, the more you just have to accept that, like, things will, like, breathtaking decisions will be made that'll knock your socks off that you just can't do anything about, right? And you just have to be able to withstand and be more
even
robust.
If things are good, things could be amazing.
100%.
It's not only bad, it's not only, these things don't only happen when things are going bad, they happen when they're going good too. So
exactly. Cool. Hopefully that was helpful in case folks haven't gone through that. We're going to go to our last segment, which is on people leadership, which is one of my favorite topics. And both of us have managed plenty of folks and hired plenty of folks. So I definitely want to talk about this. And the first thing I want to say, Billy, is, I've really like, when I first got into people management, which you got into well before me, and you're really helpful for me understanding what good looks like. But, there's this famous concept by Kim Scott called radical candor. And it talks about, like, great leadership is measured on an XY curve, where on one axis, it's empathy, like really caring about your people. But then on the other axis, the more important one is being like radical candor, like challenging directly, being firm, being direct. Candidly, for myself, the empathy was natural, but like, I really struggled to develop the radical candor to be able to challenge directly. And as soon as I had to start doing that, my team was like, wait, who's this guy? Right? Like, why is he kind of all of a sudden doing this? And I mean, my story, I had some really tough personnel decisions, whereas I've always admired you, because I feel like, not to speak for you, but I always felt like both of those things came relatively natural for you. Like you're obviously a great person, empathetic, but you also just seemingly, were really better at being able to have those hard conversations. You're seemingly able to balance both. So my first question for you is like, how did you learn to be direct without losing trust, especially as a young leader?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I appreciate that. And by the way, I've definitely made my fair share of mistakes in leadership, and I'm still trying to work on certain areas of that. But I'd say for me, and honestly, like Roman, this is like early days Gorgias, like I think he instilled this across his company, but it worked well for me. And you've seen that was the first thing for me there is transparency and clarity. Like I don't keep, I'm pretty open with everybody on my team. Like I pretty much tell it exactly like it is. I try to avoid side conversations, even with leadership or other people. And when I say transparency, I mean goals. Like people should know exactly what they're goaled on. They should have the exact playbooks, which you're amazing at, to be able to execute on their job. And at the end of the day, like if you're transparent and goals are very clear, like people know if they're performing or not performing. And that then I go to my analytical side of my brain. And like, that's the other piece is like you should be able to track performance. And a lot of companies can't track performance that well. So then when you talk about being direct, there's a lot of subjectivity that's involved in that conversation. So then it's like, here's what's expected of you. Right.
Yeah.
And you're doing this or you're not doing this. And if they're not doing it, like, it's not a surprise. So I'd say like that's how I start is I'm a very honest person about my about like what's expected and what the goals are. And then it's just it makes it easier to have that direct conversation because there's no subjectivity. It's like, look, this is the situation that we're in. And then on the empathetic part, like I don't think anybody wants to not be good at their job or struggle with their job. And so it's like, hey, it's like, I know that's not what you're trying to do. And so we're going to do everything we can do to help you, recorrect. But if you can't, like, it's also a business. And so like, we'll have that conversation. So I just try to be honest. But I think it has to start with transparency and
I like that.
Yeah. And that's not always easy at a lot of companies, but
I think the company sets the tone. Like you can be a great leader like yourself, but if the company doesn't set the tone or culture of being transparent, like it will impact you negatively. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
Last question on this one before we get to the wrap up, Billy. And this will really help early managers, early leaders is like, if you think about some of like the tougher conversations that you might have to have, say with an IC, I'll give you a couple examples. So like one of them, like maybe a high performer comes to you and is like hammering you for like promotion or a raise, but maybe you don't think they're ready for it. Or there's conflict within the team, right? Like attribution issues, or someone's really struggling, showing some weird behaviors, and you got to have a tough conversation. So my question for you, Billy, is like, how do you personally, you don't have to like comment on the specific ones, but like, how do you personally initiate what is a tough conversation for you and the individual, where you got to like book time with them, you got to sit them down, and you got to be direct and firm to like address something head on, right? So like, because I think this is something that like so many people struggle with. Lord knows I struggle with it. So like the question is like, how do you personally initiate and approach otherwise really challenging and uncomfortable conversations of any topic, with those people and handling it as delicate as you can?
Yeah, they're good questions, and I'll go through two because you ask great questions, by the way. And I think there's two scenarios that need to be addressed here. I think the performance conversations, hey, you're underperforming, are for me, even though I'm empathetic, I think those are easier to have because the expectations are set very clear. It's objective. So I think not that they're not difficult, but they're easy to have. And I'm just direct. And a lot of times I feel like I don't know, maybe it's the approach, but it's set up in a situation where by the time that conversation is happening, that person knows. So it's difficult for them, but they know. So it's easier to have that conversation directly with them because they're not surprised, things aren't unclear. So I'd say just to go back to that. Now, the tougher conversations for me are top performers looking for promotions. They want to grow. They come at you with a lot of things. Those are tough conversations to have. And I want everyone to get promoted and make more money and grow in their career. But I think that the scenario that a lot of us are in is like, maybe the role they're trying to get isn't available. If they're trying to go to manager, there's not a manager role, or maybe they're at the top of the kind of senior IC that we have. Those are the tough conversations to have. And again, how do I handle those? I try to, maybe I'm overly honest, try to say, hey, like, first I'll set growth tracks and competencies around growth tracks. Like, do you meet X, X, and X? And I'll really try to push them and get the most out of them and say, hey, like, you need to do these things exceptionally to be eligible for a promotion. Then the other thing is that I won't overcommit. And I'll say, hey, look, like, you are there, But until the role's open, and I'll give you an example at my last company at Customer IO, I had this guy's an amazing performer, and he was definitely ready to lead a team, and he was international, and we just didn't have the headcount for him to lead a team. That we had one other person plus him, and we just didn't have a manager role. So and he really wanted it, and I wanted to get it to him, and I was just like, look, when our goals go up and we justify the headcount, you can become a manager. And I left recently, but now he's a manager, and it took a while, but I'd say the approach there is don't overcommit. Like, you got to be honest, and if they're frustrated, that's tough. But going back to that, they have to do what they can control. And it's like they keep on doing their best and grow the region and take accountability and then get into manager. Or if they're not getting that role, they have to go elsewhere. And you never want to see that. But it's like sports too, right? Like, if you're not getting what you need in one club, like, you could make the decision to get promoted elsewhere if you're thinking about what's best for yourself. So I just lead with honesty and transparency in most conversations. And I find that helps make the conversation easier for me. And don't overcommit to things.
No, I think that's great. I think that this should go down as one of the more powerful segments, just because it's such a personal, emotional one that is, like, honestly, like, so effing hard to navigate on both sides. One of the ways there for anyone listening is, like, expectation setting. Like, that was a critical mistakes I made, where the first time I was, like, having to be tough on people, or, like, if you're denying promotions, they're like, well, why? And it's like, well, crap, I didn't set any growth tracks. So, like, Billy did a really good job making sure that those expectations are set. And that really protects you as the manager leader, because it's like you have something to fall back onto as, like, a reference point. Cool. Yeah. All right, Billy, we're going to get into our final 3 questions, and this is going to be rapid fire. So we'll try to keep these short, and so that we'll get you out of here on time. And so this is two of them on just kind of partner manager profiles, and then we'll wrap up with a fun one. So first things first, in your view, if you think of, like, the best partner managers you ever work with, superstars, what actually separates a superstar partner manager from just a solid one? Like, what are the characteristics, rapid fire, like the best partner manager traits you can think of?
Yeah, all rapid fire. I think for any partnership motion, that outroverted personality, and you can't really train that, but, like, that's going to go a long way. It's so relational. So, like, I think outroverted people make great partner people. And then the other one is, I think, what am I doing for my partner question? Like, they're always asking themselves, like, how can I add value to my partner?
I like that.
And I know everyone says this, but it's true. Like, the worst partner manager, the one that get on, they say, hey, like, let me see your account list. Like, what leads can you send me today? And they're not really thinking about, what I deliver to that partner. So outroverted and just thinking about the partner first is going to be the winning recipe.
I love that. Another one I'll add that I'm sure you'll agree with is just, like, biz dev oriented, like pipeline, like just bottom line focus. Like, doesn't mean you ignore the other stuff. And I like how you focus on, like, value to partners, but, like, you've got to understand what really matters, and you got to think of yourself as a P&L in your own right. And you're costing the company money, well, how much are you bringing yourself in? And the more you can, like, improve that ratio, the better your job security.
It should be for any job, really.
But like, it really should be. But, like, it's people try to justify it with, like, higher top of funnel quotas and KPIs. So
100%.
We know that doesn't work. Cool. Second last one, Billy, is what's the single most important skill partner managers should be investing in learning and developing heavily as we head into 2026? Skill.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, I'm gonna kind of cop out on this one myself, but like, AI adoption, and it's not AI with your partner management. It's just, like, we talk about having 50 or 100 partners, like, sending 20 follow-ups after a week is daunting. And so, like, right now, and it's pretty simple, but I use 3 tools, like, every day for partner management, right? Like, I use Granola to take notes and then craft action items and copy paste the email. So I can manage, 3 times as many partner with that one app. I use ChatGPT, and I've trained my own GPT to be my own, like, partnership strategist and data analysis person. So, like, I have a GTP all for Salesforce only, right? It's like, I don't have to rely on an ops person. I say, hey, like, I'm trying to make this report and this custom bucket formula. Like, how do I do this? And it spits it out. So I'd say, like, you should be using both of those. And then I do some vibe coding on the side. But like, we're doing some cool
AI proficiency.
Yeah.
Like, there's a guy, there's productivity. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a guy on the team right now who vibe coded this really cool auditing tool for partners that he's now using. This is at Attentive. I'm only there 3 weeks. I can't take credit for it, but, like, that's cool. That's pretty good. Like, those are things you want to do. So yeah,
I love that. I think there's a lot of use cases for, like, partner enablement and partner marketing. I've talked to a few other folks, like, most marketing teams are like, yeah, we'll get this done in 3 months, and they won't even build it in their year vision. Not a knock at that, but they just don't know it. So it's like, what are the things that, like, you can't recreate a PRM with, like, a vibe code. Like, that's not the point. But, like, what are those?
Be a lot more efficient.
What are those lightweight things that you can ship via vibe coding? I'm a huge fan of that.
If you don't feel like you're at least 50% more efficient than you were 2 years ago, then I would be thinking about how to improve my efficiency and my output.
100%. And then last one, Billy, more of a personal one. Look, you've been a long time supporter of Partnership Mastermind at the various companies you've been at, consistently putting, teammates through our programs. Given how precious budget is, we're really grateful for that. But why has that always kind of felt like a good investment for you, if I may ask?
Yeah, I mean, I think with your Partnership Mastermind specifically, I know it's changed a lot over the past 30 days and 2 weeks with your launch, but I think specifically with that community is it's hands-on. Like I'm not a big fan of like really high level stuff, or even communities that you join and there's 100 channels and there's a lot of mixed quality of people in there. And I won't name any, but like I've been in some of these, and the courses that you've run are like, one, you've been very successful in partnerships, but two, they're very workshop style and hands-on. And so I think people get a lot out of that. And so I think you should invest in L&D. And then, with the Mastermind Collective, like I've been in the platform, and we talked today, but I need a playbook for the agency success motion at Attentive right now. And I went in there. It's like we can build like 70% of our playbook from that. And instead of making it a quarter-long initiative, it can be like a 1-week initiative. So there's just a lot of great tools in there to actually help the people on the team be good at their jobs. It's not high level. I'm a huge fan of what you've been building.
I appreciate that big time, Billy. We'll get you around this. You just today, which congratulations, launched your own podcast. So I would love to be able to plug that. So quickly tell us about your new podcast before we wrap up.
Yeah, I appreciate the plug. And it's only one episode. We have 4 or 5 recorded. Going to try to push one every 2 weeks. But essentially, it's on that AI proficiency piece. It's not partnerships related at all, though. Like partnership people can definitely take advantage. Go listen to Chris's first episode if you want to see how you can be a partnership leader. But it's essentially called Your Co-Pilot. And I'm bringing on people who use AI to either build their businesses or do their jobs in a more efficient way. And the one kind of requirement for all of these people is they have to do a screen share. It's not talking about tools that you're using. Like you have to show people what you're actually doing. And the hope is that, this helps people who are a bit stressed about feeling like they're behind with AI proficiency, which I've been there. So that's what we're doing. And we launched the first one today, and we're going to try to launch one every couple of weeks.
I love that. I think that's a huge gap in the market. I was obviously thrilled to be on there. I had a ton of fun, and definitely encourage people to check it out. Yorko, YORCO. Search up Billy McClennan on LinkedIn. But look, Billy, this was honestly fantastic, long overdue. Thank you so much for all your time.
No, I appreciate you having me, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Until next time, everyone, thanks so much for joining the Partnership Mastermind podcast. If you like what you heard today, please follow and subscribe. Until next time.